Hi there, my name is John Neeson and I'm a student at Dakota State University in Madison, South Dakota. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about special education. It's an area that a lot of people are vaguely familiar with but don't know much about. And this video is designed towards parents and so they can get a better idea of some services that are available for their kids, how special education started, and things along those lines. So I hope you enjoy the video and I hope you learn something along the way. The 1400s to 1700s was a difficult time for people with disabilities. It was largely because during that time period, people thought that demonic possession was the main cause for people having something wrong with them. It wasn't until John Locke came up with the idea that all children were born with a blank slate for their minds that people started to kind of change their notions about people with disabilities. In the late 1700s, Jean-Marc Gaspard Itard was a physician and an authority on diseases. He sought new methods to teach those with mental challenges when he found a young man who apparently had no upbringing out in the woods. Jean-Marc tried to teach this man a lot of things, and he succeeded in a few aspects, but was unable to teach him how to talk or how to live on his own. But still, he is referred to as a patriarch of special education because he helped. Here's the story for it a little bit, but he helped set the gateway for special education. Other people hadn't really even tried how to teach those that were less fortunate before him. So, some of the main goals he had for Victor were to interest him in social life, improve awareness of other things, um, and he never could quite approach normalcy, but he still is important because he helped set that mark early on. There are also many educational opportunities. Here we have the Thomas Hopkins Gallaudet School, which is formed for people that were deaf. Thomas Hopkins started that one in the early 1800s because he met a young lady and she inspired him. Many other stories like that. The Elwyn School in New Jersey. It used to be the Vinland School for training, but it has now been changed and updated as things are. And you can see they have a nice little web page here. So the Elwyn School in New Jersey, and then also the Perkins School for the Blind. It's very notable, one of the most famous in the country, and that's because, as you can see here on the right side of the screen, Helen Keller actually went there as a young girl. And she formed some great relationships with her teachers there as well. So there are always opportunities out there in the world for these kids that have disabilities. One of the first court cases that dealt with special education actually didn't refer specifically to special education. Brown versus the Board of Ed happened in the 50s. It was actually a civil rights case, but its main focus was on that the schools weren't equal, and it pressured people to look at the quality that these students were receiving in their education, even if they're in a different facility, and people started to look at special education differently because of that. Then came the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and it relates to non-discrimination. That's basically it in a nutshell, is not discriminating against people because they are different or have anything quote unquote wrong with them, or any difficulties, I guess would be a better word. But there are a lot of sections to it that cover disabilities and more broadly than that, but in a nutshell, it deals with not discriminating in education. Then the Education for the Handicapped Act came along. It's more commonly known as the Public Law 94-142, and it It guarantees a free and appropriate public education. That's pretty self-explanatory, I guess. Appropriate being the best education they can receive. Um, there are a lot of other acronyms here too. We'll take a look at the LRE, least restrictive environment, and that is the place that is the best learning environment for the child, whether it's in the classroom or in a resource room or a special ed room. Due process, and that is the rights that your family has, both the child and the parents. And then also the IEP, the Individualized Education Program. I'll talk about that in a little while, but that was all Public Law 94 there. So they had some preschool and infant toddler laws take place just before that, or excuse me, after that, 1986. And then 1990, it was changed to IDEA for the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. A big thing there, the amendment also replaced the phrase handicapped child with child with disability. And that's important because if you say the handicapped child, they're labeled by the word handicapped. It's almost what defines them, rather than they're just a normal child that has a disability. It's got a better, more positive connotation to it. There again, we see the least restrictive environment was involved. And also in 1997, there's some more amendments that cover some more like assistive technology, things that can help out these students in the classroom. And then 2004, IDEA, as it is now called, was revised again. There are a lot of little things about it, I guess, as far as the regulations that tell about what has to be done by the schools and that sort of thing. So who has a disability? These are the categories for which students can receive special education. Deaf blind, pretty self-explanatory, hearing loss and vision loss. Emotional disturbance is a behavior disorder where the behaviors that they have or ability to cope with things may be so severe that they cannot function well enough to perform in school. Cognitive disability is anything involved with their brain, their ability to think or use cognitive skills. Hearing loss, pretty self-explanatory. Specific learning disability would be anything in a specific subject area where they have trouble learning that certain thing, whether it be reading, math, something to that effect. Multiple disabilities be, more than one of the above here. Orthopedic impairment is anything that could affect their ability to learn in the classroom, dealing with like a physical issue. Orthopedic would be like physical, so someone that has an inability to use their hands might have trouble writing, so they would have a disability that way and would have to be accounted for. Vision loss, deafness, both pretty self-explanatory. Speech language would be anything where they have trouble communicating verbally. Other health impaired could just be anything like a serious heart condition, something to that effect where they cannot learn as well. Autism is an up-and-coming, more commonly diagnosed. It's a developmental disorder where they have trouble communicating a lot of times. Traumatic brain injury is pretty self-explanatory, and developmental delay is just in younger kids while they're still developing. They're reevaluated after they get to that point, and they're actually school age. I'm going to talk to you briefly about your rights as a parent. As a parent, you have pretty much the right to do whatever you want with your child in regards to their education. Um, if you don't want them to be tested for special education, um, they don't have to be tested at all. Granted, that's probably not the best case scenario, but if that's how you feel as a parent, that's your right as well. If you want to change anything else, where they're placed. If the IEP team decides that they would benefit from a certain amount of time in a resource room, and you said no, we think the best place for them is the general classroom with all their classmates, then that's where they will be placed. Ultimately, all of the decisions have to go through you as the parent, because it's kind of a mutual understanding between the school and society that you do know what's best for your child when it comes down to that. Parents also have the right to obtain an independent evaluation. If you or if the school says we're thinking about referring your child for special ed, they want to get your permission, and you want to have your child evaluated elsewhere, like by your own personal doctor or another evaluation team, you have that right as well. Like I said in the beginning, you have the right to do what you think is best for your child in any aspect of their education. So the special education process, how they're evaluated. First, pretty self-explanatory, child find. We need to find the child, and you might notice this just in class. Say, Jimmy's struggling with this. Maybe he should be referred for special education. Then, before anything takes place, we need to get parents' permission, and the parents will be involved throughout the entire process in special education. Parents have a high amount of involvement. After that, the child is evaluated using some form of assessment to help specify what disability they might have, depending on if they end up having one or not. To where the suspicions lie is what kind of evaluation will be used. After that, they determine whether or not they are eligible based on what they found. They might try more assessments if they think there's still something wrong, but they don't know what. Like I said, the parents will be involved in this whole process. And then, so step 5, say the child is found eligible for services. Then they start getting an IEP team together. And they'll conduct a meeting with this IEP team next. And it'll typically be the gen ed teacher, the parents, the student, a special ed teacher or a speech therapist, depending on what kind of disability they have. And then they're going to write the IEP, which is the Individualized Education Plan. And we'll talk about that next after this process part of the video. So, but a lot of times there's somebody else involved with the IEP process. Any representative that is important to it. So after that, after they evaluated and the IEP is set, we provide services based on that. Fill out the plan that we set forth in the meeting. And then along the way, we got to measure progress. Documentation is key in special education. They have to write down everything that goes on and keep up with the parents along the way. At the next meeting, they're just going to review the IEP, make sure it's up to date and still fits the child. After all, it is individualized plan for their education, and have to make sure it's very fitting. And then the child is reevaluated as well to see if they're making progress towards the goals that they set at the meeting as well. So in a nutshell, that's what goes on with the evaluation process. Alright, so I'm here on the South Dakota Board of Education website because that is where I'm from, in South Dakota. And anyway, you can take a look at the IEP form and all that kind of stuff regarding special education here. Basically what an IEP, the Individualized Education Program, if you don't remember that, is for is to just put everything in writing, to organize it for you. This first page is just kind of generic information about your child, and so it'll have to be filled out. But anyway, it's a great management tool just to make sure that they are getting everything they need out of their education. This form here covers about every aspect of education, and the IEP will help keep goals and stuff in order to. Here you see present levels of achievement. Don't get caught up in the big lingo that they put. They just want to know how well your student is doing right now, their present level at which they are performing, or how well they're doing. And another thing that special ed teams also always want to focus on is your student's strength. Um, Granted, if they have a weakness, that's something we want to help fix or help them improve on. But we want to build on their strengths as well. Um, there's a lot of goals. Everything is goal driven. Everyone has goals in their lives, excuse me. And your student in special education is no different. And we want to help them reach those goals. So that's what a lot of this is specifically writing down how we can achieve those goals and things that need to be done here. Like there might be another service that needs to be done to help them achieve those goals. And then there's a transition area, which is also for students as they transition from school life out into the adult world. There are also blanks for that least restrictive environment that we talked about. And like I said, it covers about every part of your student's education. So the process is very thorough, but with a good cause as well. Here's my web page that we made for this class in school, and have a list of some programs that are available to help parents out. Um, if you check out any of the websites, Resource Network, Advocacy, Department of Ed, Social Services, there are a lot of services available for parents. Parent connection groups, anything to that effect. So there's always a way to get help if you need some type of service like that. Head Start is a great program to get students the early help that they need. This website is very good about keeping up with recent news and current events that are going on. So if you want to attend any of those events, Head Start is a great program as well. And Special Quest Group, which was designed in the late 90s, I believe, just around collaboration and communication between parents. So all of these are great resources for parents. Being from South Dakota, I just wanted to touch a little bit more on the parents' rights. There is a South Dakota Parents' Rights Handbook on the Board of Education webpage, and it talks a lot about procedural safeguards, which would be protecting you guys legally if the school isn't carrying out your child's education program in the right way. You might be entitled to some sort of compensation. And then again, just to remind you that as a parent, you get to choose everything in your child's education, because as a parent, you know what is best for your child. And I guess I just wanted to hammer in that point one last time. But just know that there are resources available, and like I said, you do have the right to do what's best for your child as well. So thank you for taking the time to view this video. I hope you enjoyed it and possibly learned a few things, and use it as a great resource if you need that as well for your parents out there. So y'all have a great day and take care.